news you can use.
Welcome to The Scoop, where we're providing news you can use about nonprofits and government services and other agencies that can be of help to you and your families. I'm Louise Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Tampa Bay Community Network, tbcn.org, to find out more information on that. And with me today is Margaret Luculano, who is the founder and the acting Executive Director of Angels for Foster Kids. Welcome, Margaret. So glad you could be here today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about Angels for Foster Kids, how you got the little history and some of the services you provide.
Well, I grew up in foster care as a child, and in 2007 had a calling while performing guardian ad litem services that there was just a lot of children still in need and a lot of things that weren't improving since the time that I was in care. So we founded Angels for Foster Kids. That's kind of how it was created, and went after our 501(c), and we've been going ever since, this year being our strongest year. But our purpose is to improve the lives of abused and neglected children, and specifically those that enter the foster care system.
How do you do that? What kind of services are you providing to them?
We focus on 3 different programs, one being our Dream Makers program, where we grant wishes. We fulfill wishes for children that are in care. These are service dollars that they can't receive through the government, and the foster parents and the local agencies don't have this type of funding. So a wish will come through HKI or a guardian ad litem program, or somebody who's involved in the child's care, a foster parent, and it could be summer camp, it could be wanting to be able to play football, cheerleading, educational, tutoring, clothing, and the wish will come through, and then we fulfill it and bring it back through to the child.
Really good. And so you've had those kind of wishes. How about, generally when I read about wishes, it's always, I want to meet some celebrity sports hero or something like. You don't do those kinds of things.
You know, we don't. If we had a wish like that come through, we would definitely bend over backwards to try to fulfill it. But it's very interesting that the children that are actually in our child welfare system have much simpler wishes. We'll get wishes for McDonald's gift certificates from some of our younger kids. Busch Gardens passes, things they normally don't get to experience every day.
Okay, so there's the Dream Makers program. Do you have other programs as well?
We do. We have another program to try to prevent children from entering foster care, and these are situations, usually family intervention services, to when a call might be made because they notice the electricity's out, or there might not be enough food in the home because the parents have lost their jobs, and the children appear to be somewhat neglected due to lack of food, electricity, or clothing. And we'll get called in and try to help that family and prevent the removal of the children by providing electric, helping them with food, helping them get jobs, things like that.
So bare necessities you're talking
Bare
about.
necessities to keep the child at home.
Our system doesn't provide funding for those kinds of things to happen. I mean, you're getting, people who are foster parents get a stipend every month, right? Some kind of amount of money. That doesn't increase because they lost their jobs, or?
Well, in this situation, these are children that, let's just say an abuse report was called in by a neighbor. They noticed that there's kids living in the home. They haven't had any electric on for 3 months. The parents aren't working. The kids are maybe looking a little disheveled because there's no water in the home for showering. And in those types of situations, where there's no abuse that's been occurring, it's just because the parents have lost their jobs and are getting behind and have had their electric or their water turned off, and they just need help. That's when we'll come in and we'll try to help get those services back in place, get food, and work with other agencies to help these people get jobs. And there is funding, but it's very, very limited funding, and there's just not enough.
And there's probably not the resources to know where to find it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, and this is the problem with most of the things, that there are services out there, the community's providing, there's many nonprofits and government agencies providing services, but the word isn't out as much as it needs to be because, of course, nobody has the dollars to do advertising or sending out the messages, and that's what we're hoping to do.
Collaboration would
here.
be, yeah, would be very impactful in our community. But
how big is this problem? How many many children are there in foster care around the country that need assistance, or how many are there? I saw something on your website with 285,000 children. Is that just Hillsborough County, or is that
No,
the state, or where
that's
is it?
national. 285,000 children have entered care this year, meaning they have entered the child welfare system. On average, on any given year, for the last 5 years, we average about 500,000 children in foster care in the U.S. So it's a definite epidemic, and it's growing, and our economy's not helping.
500,000 is the total number, that is not the new amount coming in.
Total.
You're saying 250,000 came in the last year.
Exactly.
And there's always about 500,000 kids
There's always
in
about
foster care.
500,000 kids in foster care. And it depends, statistics can be tricky, but we take them from, the top government agency sites and so forth, and it's pretty common to have 500,000 children in care.
What happens, do you think, well, having had the experience yourself, if you don't get some of these opportunities that you're trying to give the kids, like camp or some of these things in the Dream Maker program?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that just basic necessities or just a little time out to be allowed to be a child is really helpful in that child growing up and becoming a productive adult. So many of the children that are removed from their homes are put into a foster care situation. They can't go next door and play with their friends, or they can't go spend the night at a friend's house. These are privileges that are taken away from them because of safety reasons. And so I call them being part of the protective, the child, like the protective witness type of program, because once you're taken into care, that child is hidden from the abusers, and it makes it very difficult for them to have any type of normal childhood. For example, if you want to spend the night at a friend's house and you're a foster child, your case manager has to be able to get that family background checked, security checked, and all of that stuff in place before you're able to have an overnight sleepover.
I never knew this. This is really an interesting dilemma, and that's only in the cases where it's abuse. It's not where a parent voluntarily had to put a child in foster care for some other reason, like an income loss or something like that.
Well, even in those instances, the foster care family is pretty well protected, and while that child is in state's care, the case manager and the agency is going to ensure the safety of that child at all costs.
My goodness. I want to hear more about this. There'll be a message on, and please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to The Scoop. I'm Louise Thompson, Executive Director of Tampa Bay Community Network, tbcn.org. If you'd like to look for us on the internet. And with me and continuing is Margaret Luculano.
Got it.
I got it. Luculano. Sounds like ukulele in a way,
It
huh?
does.
Who is the founder and the acting executive director of Angels for Foster Kids. And she's been telling us about this program. How long do kids end up staying in the foster care program, on average?
On average. The national average is 28 months, which is double what it's supposed to be, according to the report card. But it's a pretty lengthy stay, and many children stay much longer than that, but average is 28 months.
Is there a percentage of them that then get adopted by their foster parents, or are they getting adopted out or returned back to their families, or what happens?
A little bit of both. Reunification with the family is always the priority. If the parents can complete their case plan in a timely manner and complete all the tasks, then the children will go home. In some instances, parental rights will be terminated, which is a very lengthy court process, which will tie them in foster care even longer, and then they'll go up for adoption. Some foster families do adopt, or they'll go into an agency, and we'll try to find a forever family for them.
We usually see stories where you have foster family that has just like the foster family has many children. Is that common? Not just not one, they'll
Right.
just take more than one.
Right. It is common. I mean, technically, you know, somebody's only licensed for 2 and you should only have 2 children in the home. But in this instance, I always use, instead of discussing the issues the agencies have, I use my personal experiences. And I was in over 12 foster homes as a child, and I was never in a home with less than 6 other girls, even though we would only be licensed for 2 or 3. The system is very overwhelmed right now, and there's just emergencies to where we need a place to put a child in, you know, whatever foster family is open.
You say 12 foster homes. In what period of time?
I entered foster care at age 12, and I aged out at 16 and a half. So I was in 12 homes between those 4 years.
It's an average of three homes per year. That meant you changed schools.
Absolutely.
So nothing was steadfast for you in your life at a time when kids need a lot of continuity and consistency and so forth when you're going into being a teenager, right?
Oh, exactly. And part of that problem was because of my age. And at the time, I was in a temporary, what was called temporary foster homes. We've improved that today. You know, we don't have those temporary foster homes, but those were 90-day max stays. And because of my teenage years, I wasn't going to be adoptable, so I was on a path to age out. So they were trying to turn me into an adult as quickly as possible.
Is that still the case now, where we have a great many children in that age, or are they much younger?
Absolutely. You know, the average child enters care 2 to 3 years of age. A very large percentage of children are under age 5 in foster care, but we have plenty of teenagers in foster care as well. So,
I've been reading about the problem with children who age out of the foster care system, and then they're homeless. Is that how are you dealing with that situation?
Well, right now we just begun the early stages of developing a program to address housing within our county for some of these children. When children age out, and they are still children at 18, when they age out of the foster...
And they're still maybe in high school or whatever, right?
Yep, still needing to complete high school or the GED, or you know, making preparations to go to college. Unfortunately, such a small percentage, less than 1% of our children are actually eligible to take advantage of college because they have just way too many. They're a little behind in certain things. And if they haven't been adopted, and if their foster parents aren't willing to allow them to stay past their 18th birthday, we need housing for them. These are children that are at severe risk of becoming homeless, and so we're working on a program now that will provide job skills training, provide housing and basic necessities, so by the time they turn 23, our hope is that they're going to be self-sustaining adults.
Well, it seems so strange that they would just be, if they were in high school, just you just hit 18, bye-bye, see you around, and how are you going to get to algebra tomorrow morning or whatever?
Right.
It just seems so, we haven't made such continuity in the way we care for these kids at all.
Right.
So your capital campaign will hopefully end up providing the actual housing that they could go to that wouldn't be necessarily like a foster home?
No, because children who age out of the system, they want out of the system. They don't want any more case managers knocking on their door, or guardians, or having to go into court every single month. I mean, they want to be what they consider to be free. They've been a part of the system for a very long time. So our housing will actually be apartment-style housing. They'll rent their own apartment. They will live by themselves unless they choose to have a roommate. And we will just have services in place that will provide them with counseling, job skills training, and working with partnership with other agencies within the community. Because really the only goal is to get these kids into adults and being able to sustain for themselves and preventing them crime or going on welfare and early pregnancies and things that usually happen to children who age out.
Your population of the kids that you're taking care of, they're residing in Hillsborough County and in Pinellas County?
Right now, we're covering Hillsborough and Pinellas County. We do have agencies who contact us from other counties as well, and we try to help. But right now, our focus is to create a model in Hillsborough that we hope that will work, and then we can spread it out to the other counties.
If somebody's watching the show that's from a different county or knows of a situation in another county, is there a like program that they would go to find help with sending a child to camp or joining a Little League baseball team or whatever it is that they're looking for?
Well, I always say to start with Department of Children and Families within your county. It's a good place to call and find out what services are available and then go from there. Every county has many different agencies and services, and they're very different in each county.
So our state doesn't do the same thing all across the board?
No.
So how does it work?
Well, you know, it starts with the federal dollars, right? And the federal dollars come into the state, and then the state, each state is different. DCF will, Department of Children and Families, in some instances will privatize to an agency in a certain county, or they'll manage the children in that county, but it actually goes down to the county level.
Is that what your agency is doing, sort of?
Our agency is actually working through the county agencies, with each county that we get involved with, and each county is a different agency.
Okay, so for example, in Hillsborough, we have, you mentioned HKI
Right.
before, and I know some folks won't know what that stands for, but it's
Hillsborough
Hillsborough Kids,
Yeah.
Inc., right? Which
Hillsborough Kids Inc. And they do a better job than most, but in Hillsborough County, they own have the contract from DCF, and they're responsible for the children in this county. And it's a different agency in Pinellas or Polk or wherever you reside.
Okay, we're going to take a little quick break, and we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to The Scoop. I'm Louise Thompson, the Executive Director of Tampa Bay Community Network, tbcn.org, and with me is Margaret
Luculano.
Luculano. I don't know when I'm going to get this, Margaret.
That's okay.
This is Margaret Luculano, who's the founder of Angels for Foster Kids and is doing a super job trying to help these kids out. You have a personal story about this and how you ended up doing this in your life. Can you relate that?
Absolutely. I grew up in foster care and aged out at 16 and a half. I was emancipated and made a ward of the state. We try not to do that as much today at that age. We try to hold off to 18, but in my case, I emancipated at 16 and a half. And, you know, fled from the system at that point and went and supported myself and took off and wanted to never come back into the foster care system. Later on in life, you know, working, and I ran into a little girl who had just been removed from her home because her brother had been killed, wound up dying from abuse. And I wound up talking to one of the guardian ad litems that was there visiting the case one day, and she started talking to me about the guardian ad litem program, and I got, you know, very interested in it and got suckered in. I was like, what's this about, this guardian ad litem program? Because when I grew up in care, we didn't have guardian ad litems, and I definitely didn't have one.
Explain what they are.
Guardian ad litems are volunteers. It's a strong volunteer base all across the U.S. that advocate for children within the court system. So when a child comes into care and becomes part of the child welfare system, the judge will appoint a guardian ad litem.
Do you have to be an attorney? Not
Nope.
really? No.
Nope.
Okay.
You go through training, and every county's got them. And you go through training, about 30 hours of training. You get certified, and you start getting appointed cases the day you graduate. So they have a huge need for guardians. There's just not enough of them. And you know, I got talked into the program, and I said, I'm going to give this a try and see if I can you know, give back to some of the children. And the first couple of cases that I had were so overwhelming to me, and you reminding me of my time in care, that I took a step back and said, well, I can't do this. I'm not ready to go back and be part of that system.
That must be post-traumatic stress syndrome or something.
It was, you know,
Yeah.
it was at first. And then, you know, I was so overwhelmed with, I had hoped that the foster care agency and the way that children were handled coming into the system had changed or grown up in the 20 years I had been away from it, and it just wasn't. In a lot of senses, it was worse, maybe because I was working behind the scenes now and I wasn't, you know, on the child side any longer. But I just had a very, very strong calling to come in and do something about it.
I guess you were disappointed in the way things were being handled.
Absolutely, and I just believe that we all experience things for a reason, and these kids relate to me. I've been there. I know how they feel. I know what it's like to age out. I know what it's like to go from home to home, and so I'm the perfect candidate to go out and go back and help these children through the system.
You just mentioned one way that people can help, the Guardian ad litem program.
Right.
But in your case, what you're doing with, which seems to me more, Well, theirs is direct too, so, but it's direct, but it's another needed service. How can people support you or help Angels for Foster Kids?
Well, I always say start by going to our website. We keep all the statistics up on a national average and provide links of what's going on in the community. And I think the most important thing that people can do in our community is become aware of how many thousands of children are entering foster care, just within our own county. Because I think if people became aware of these children, I think that there would be a great, we would have a much bigger outpouring of people who wanted to get involved and help them.
Okay. What other thing can they do? And when you say an outpouring of people who would want to help them, well, in the first place, I think you mentioned that they're sort of being protected. And so there's very little direct contact you can make, correct?
Right. Well, if you want direct contact, which is a wonderful way to make a difference in the life of these children, I'm an advocate for the guardian ad litem program. So if you can be a good guardian, that's just a huge difference. You can go through your local agency like Hillsborough Kids Incorporated here and become a mentor for these children if you don't. If court's not your thing and hanging out waiting in the lobby for a few hours, I highly recommend becoming a mentor like a Big Brother, Big Sister program. Become a foster parent if you have space in your home. Open up your home for a child. Look at all the children that are open for adoption. Or, contact an agency such as, Angels for Foster Kids and help us raise funds. We're always looking for blankets, clothing, backpack supplies. We have an unlimited need that these children have. So there's
How are
lots
you
of
being
ways.
funded now?
We are funded through lots of grants, foundations, corporations, and then individual donors.
And you have on your board our mayor of Tampa, don't you, and some other folks, or?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
I served on a board to where I had all those people. That was for another agency.
Okay,
and,
all right, that's where it was. Okay.
But you probably read about me.
Being involved in your agency, they could contribute dollars or these items. Do you collect them? Is that what you do?
We
go
do.
Buy them
and they collect them. We just have an ongoing need. So I would say hit our website and contact us because whether you have 1 hour or 1,000 hours, anybody can use the help in the county.
Okay. And you don't have very many employees, do you?
No, I don't. My agency is a little bit different because of my business background. I owned my own corporation and sold it in 2007. I wanted to use my business acumen, and I created my own seed funding, and so all of my donations go direct to the children. So I don't allow any middle people in between the dollars that come in my agency. They go direct to the children, which is my mission.
Which is a pretty hard thing to accomplish.
Politicians, when you go out and vote, if you don't have the time, find out who our politicians are and the people who support child welfare change and want to help these children, and those are the candidates that we need to put into office. So watch our politicians. It's a hot issue.
Yes, and we should all watch our politicians very, very, very closely. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Scoop. Please visit our website, www.tbcn.org. Good night.
News you can use.